What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Break the Ceiling series, not brought to you by Ghost. Today, Nick and I are going to dive into how we really bonded over a love for the game of poker. We met playing these private games, and we wanted to give you guys a little glimpse into our story a little bit. Nick?
Yeah, so I wanted you on this one because we were there together in the early days, 2023, when I first started getting into private. It was the beginning of your journey with it too. For whatever reason, we both stepped in, like, I think within the same month, our first invites to some of these games. So I thought, who better to have on to talk about sort of the evolution of how private has developed over the last 2 years, and also to connect it back to just the context of online poker, what it used to be, what it's turned into. I go back further than you in that regard. So I thought you can sort of capture the context of a player who's more in their 20s, whereas I remember what it was like back towards even as early as Moneymaker era, when things really started to get off the ground around then. So I figured we could find connection points back and forth between how private sort of revitalized our love for the game. I'll start off. For me, it brought me back to the glory of the biggest online games that we ever saw, which at the time where I was in high school were public. You would come home from school, you'd log on to PokerStars or Full Tilt, and you'd see Ivy, Dwan, Jungle battling it out at gigantic stakes. Stakes so big that, like, you couldn't even fathom how that much money was flying across the table. And the fact that that was accessible right in front of your face, it drew us into depositing and playing 3-6.
Right.
With zero bankroll. with the $200 that we had won in the cafeteria during pitch that day. So it was those memories, I think, that formed the initial obsession with the dream.
Yeah, for me, I remember watching high stakes poker and Poker After Dark with my dad, and the same type of guys battling it out. Just it created this dream in me that I just fell in love with the game instantly. I, again, was from an era where I'm younger than you. And when I came up, I could sort of see that online poker was tough. And that's what led me to go down a different path and just play tournaments and not even pursue it, because it just seemed so impossible. So it's interesting. I like that we're going to dive in today, because you tried it. You did the online route, and you have more experience there. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Let's do it. Where do you want to start?
Let's just talk about, I think we could just dive right into our first time playing private and how I brought us back there, because so I banked a tournament and I got invited to play on with Justin and Art on a stream game.
And
this
was before we even met at
right. This is before we met on T1.
Tell me what you won, by the way.
I finished third in the Millionaire Maker. Like 10,000 something players, just total luck boxed it. It was
what year?
2023. So right before you and I met. This is how I even got introduced to the whole thing. And once I made the score, I knew that I didn't want to play like the public 510 or whatever. So I just texted JY, and I knew that they had started a game, the Table One guys. And I was like, hey, is there any way I could get a seat? And he's like, I don't know about in our game, because, like, they didn't know what kind of player I would be in the game. But they were like, just because you had a tournament score, there's probably good TV. We're playing on, I think it was No Gamble, No Future.
Okay.
And, you can come on for that episode. And it was a No Gamble, No Future episode with Art, Justin, Jimmy D, and Berkey. And I only brought 35K with me, because I really hadn't had any experience playing in these big cash games before. So I was like, I'll bring 35K. I'll do 10K bullets or 10, 10, 15. And if I bust it, I'll just leave. And so very first hand I sit down, just dump it to Berkey with 8-6. He makes some ridiculous call with King Jack, like King Jack high on.
Oh, wow.
It was a low board. And I just ripped it all in with 8-6 suited, just with the naked 8-6. And
did he call you a rookie?
He did. He literally did. He looked at me and he said, welcome to the big leagues, rookie. And then
standard.
And then I lose a flip to him. So now I'm stuck 20K in the game in like the first 2 orbits, all to Berkey. And I a little bit freaked out, and I put my last 15 on the table, and I spin the last 15 and end up winning 85K on the session. Art dumped it to me. It was like a surreal experience. And when I'm in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, I'm living the dream again. I'm getting to be the Dwan, the Jungle, the Ivy. I'm playing on TV. I'm playing with, a lot of money on the table, more than I was ever really exposed to in the past. Because as a tournament guy, they're chips. They're not even like, I played some 10K buy-ins, but like, this is different, And
what was the feeling when you're stuck 20 right off the bat, though? That's your first appearance. Like,
yeah,
at this point, that's borderline humiliating. And also, you're probably overexposed.
I wasn't, because I just had my score. So I was like the most pumped up I ever was. And I only brought 35K with me. So for once, I actually was doing good bankroll management. It's not my skill, but I took the 15K out of my satchel, and I just say, like, guys, let's play a bomb pot. Like, let's do a bomb pot. And it settled my nerves because I instantly flop top set in the bomb pot and double up through Art. So I didn't really have time to even process the fact that I was like on my last bullet, buried, like was probably like had a chance of playing 2 orbits and then just getting showered and not even being on the show anymore. And luckily I ran good after that. And I don't know if it was lucky or not, but I just became hooked after that day, because now it's like I won 85K in my first session. Justin Art saw me torch it with 8-6. They're like, you're invited to the game whenever you want. Like, and that's when we started playing. I started playing like on a regular basis after that.
Yeah, I didn't actually know at the time that you came through from your appearance on that stream. But I saw you walk in one day and I thought you were super green. Like, just the way that you conducted yourself, I was sure you had never been in a cash game this big. What I was drawn to, though, was that you were very comfortable throwing a lot of heat very quickly in that game. I could tell that you were definitely not risk averse, to say the least. I mean, I come from the online background, so the first thing I detected is like, this is a redliner who seems very mobilized from the jump. And I was curious, like, how you even got there, because usually tournament guys do not have that disposition. I knew you had trained with Foxen for a bit.
Yeah. I think it was just, I knew, or at least I thought that I needed to make a good impression on the game and give a lot of action. And the only way I knew how to do that was by making big bets, playing big pots, and trying to push the edge any way I could. And not like in the sense of like push out my edges, but just more in terms of like make people uncomfortable, because I knew that was fun. Like, at least it was fun for me. And I think that's how you and I started bonding, because I didn't realize the scope of like who you were when we started playing. Like, I had heard of you like on Twitter and stuff, but I didn't know like how good you were, and you were drinking at the time. This is when you were kind of in your advertising phase. So
the advertising budget.
So we started playing these big pots, and it really felt to me like I was Tom Dwan and I was playing on high stakes poker, because I'd be in a big pot with like 5 high and I'd just get to rip it all in and like know the guy wasn't going to call, just like be looking at this guy and I'm like, I know this guy's not going to call, so I'm all in. And like, it just brought me back. I think maybe that's where that risk aversion came from, because like it just brought me back to the glory days of poker for me, which was watching these guys battle on TV. And it became real. Like, poker, the dream that I'd always had with poker was right there, and it was at my fingertips, and it was fun, man. It was a lot of fun.
Let's go a bit deeper on the nerves, because I feel like that needs to be addressed for guys who are maybe exclusively online players to really connect to the private experience. There's like a couple of layers of where the nerves come from. One is it's just higher stakes than you've probably ever played online.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a stack of flags that's probably a small house.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain amount of like leverage there. Like the texture of that game is different, and just in terms of picking chips up off your stack, there's power there that didn't exist online. But there's also a level of nerves around the social element of the game.
Yeah. I mean, I think, at least for me, it was easier to relax into it once I just started playing. And I think, like, I don't know if I was, everybody says that for me, like, oh, Paul's really social at the game. He's outgoing. He's these things. But I think, like, in my first couple of games, I just knew that if I was firing and I was playing big pots, they were going to like me. And then from there, it became easy to socialize, and it kind of just shook the nerves off personally.
Cool. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah,
that frame.
Like it's just
action is basically the entry point.
Right. Like you'll be accepted. At least I was accepted when they saw me play, a 4-bet pot and I show down, the wheel with 4 deuce of diamonds. Like nobody's like, oh, this guy, screw this guy. They're like, that guy's awesome. We like him around. And then from there, socializing became like a second nature thing because it was just like I was part of the crew. Like I had earned my entry point.
That's really interesting. That's way different than my experience with getting acquainted to it. Well, I think you're more social than me just in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's funny because if people were to see us, talking alone, I think I get really relaxed when I can talk about subjects that I think are really interesting. But it took me a while to get back in the rhythm of like joking around the game, which is a big part of what private is like you have to find a way to connect to the characters of the game, not just the people around you, but the board, the cards, the chips. That's a character in itself.
Yeah.
It's a story. It's almost a theater that you have to immerse yourself in if you're going to be fun for the game. And it took me, I think, 5 sessions to make that connection. I mean, just to be totally candid, I know how I am when I'm walking into a new group in terms of small talk. It's not really all that interesting to me. It becomes more interesting if I have a couple drinks in me. So that was my path. It was just like, well, I'm playing this game for fun. I got an invite. I'm going to have a couple beers and relax with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I was initially drawn to playing with that group, because there was a social connection that almost felt like I was just going out to dinner with these guys. But we're playing poker, so it's best of both worlds. And I'm pretty shameless about telling guys who have, an initial anxiety, even, pros that we put into the game. I'll just tell them, like, if you're nervous, order a glass of wine, dude. Which is crazy because it takes me back to this story, actually, where way back, 2012, I was hanging out in a penthouse after a WSOP tournament with some guys who were very close to Tom Dwan at the time. And I can't verify this story. It's not even that sensitive, but it's funny because it connects to this. Apparently, Tom was one of the only 2 people that were contracted by a fairly large network of backers that in his contract, it was specified that he was allowed to smoke weed while playing online, I suppose.
Wow.
And it was like him and one other guy who were cleared for this or something. And I guess they had deduced at some point that like he plays better when he's smoking, or maybe he'll play longer hours if he smokes and he can handle it. But I don't know why that just popped up in my head. I guess it's because at this stage, if a guy is presenting with a lot of anxiety around his stepping into his first private game, I'll just be like, dude, just have a drink. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I'm comfortable offering that is because at this point, Poker Dominion, which is the pro division that evaluates and places pros into these Stacks Agency private games, can only focus on guys who are super obsessed with the game, who love the game, because those are the guys who are going to appreciate being moved into position at these higher levels.
Yeah.
So that was, once I made that decision that like this is going to be for guys who are so obsessed with poker, they just love it so much that it became almost like acceptable for me to be like, hey, dude, you play so much all year. When you come to Vegas, I would almost rather you see this as your vacation. Because what? You're going to play 30 hands an hour, whereas you play 500 an hour online. Like, this is not actually going to be it'll be intense, but it's not going to be analytical.
No.
In the way that the rest of your career is. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's something we bonded on early too. Is just like when we started talking about it wasn't even called Stacks at that point, but it was just when we started talking about ways to make the game better, we just knew that we wanted this experience to be more accessible because it's like it's different, man. It's not what you expect it to be. It's as close to when I was watching those shows back in the day as
shows?
you know, like High Stakes Poker, Poker After Dark. It's as close to that as I could get in the current ecosystem. At least that's what it felt like to me.
I mean, you were swinging 50 to 100K a day,
dude. Yeah,
for like months.
Yeah, I mean, the games play really big, but you don't even feel it when you're in it because it's like it's just the norm. You know, it's not. I look back now because I haven't been playing as big recently, and it's amazing the swings that I was doing every day and just not even feeling it. You know?
Yeah, there's this thing that I noticed in public speaking that applies to poker. I give pros this analogy if they're worried about playing way bigger. There's something that happens in public speaking where a room of 10 feels much smaller than a room of 100. And then there's something that happens at that next level where a room of 1,000, your brain can't comprehend the difference beyond a certain point.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you were to think about it from your anxious mind, you're like, if I was playing for 10x the stakes, I feel like I'd be terrified. I feel like I might even collapse under that pressure. We were filming the Savage Mindset behind the scenes documentary yesterday of my match with Martin Cabral. And I probably should have mentioned this in that doc, but that's what it was. It's like, you'd be surprised how unable your brain is to generate equivalent pressure beyond a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't register. It doesn't know how. You just cap out in terms of like the stress level. And then there's a clearing that you hit where it's fine after that. Just you normalize to that altitude maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but that would be the first thing I would say to a pro who's anxious about stepping into the new stakes of these games is that it's not what you literally can't feel the fear as much as you think.
Yeah, I think also, at least for me, when I think about doing something, you get so caught up in obsessing over, I wonder how I'm going to handle this or what am I going to do here? And your brain starts racing. But then when you're actually in the moment, you just do it. You don't at least for me, I just do it. I just go play and I let it happen. You know, I think I can relate this to when I made the final table of the Millionaire Maker. That night before I'm playing that final table, obviously I know this, I might never be in this spot again. And I'm nervous and I'm like texting Foxen. I'm like, dude, what do I do in this situation? You know, I'm coming in at this and he's like, dude, breathe and just be fearless. They're all going to be scared. He's like, just go out there and fire. He's like,
this
don't
was
be
the
afraid.
one that you got third.
Right. And I came in tied for like, I think there was 8 people left. I came in tied for 8th. Like it was me and 2 other guys were tied at the bottom. And from the very first hand, I was just like, I'm going to establish aggression here because nobody else is going to, I think. And maybe like the chip leader who had been in that spot, Pavel Plesov, he had made $1 million score before. Other than him, I was like, none of these guys, like they all don't want to blow it kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I think like tournaments just kind of naturally throw you in these positions without you even realizing it. What's it like for you, for like the online guys? I'm curious because it's obviously different. You know, you're grinding. It's more of a steady thing. You're not just thrown into a life-changing spot all of a sudden out of nowhere. So how does that work?
Well, I think you separated into the 2 eras that we remember from online. Like for the guys who are more my age in your late 30s, you remember Rail Heaven. You remember what PokerStars was like right after the Moneymaker boom. In those days, the rail was digital. What I mean by that is guys like me and my buddies in high school, we'd come home, we'd open the lobby, we'd see these guys playing for massive right in front of our face at tables that were attainable. Like if you had the money, you could literally buy into that game on that site by opening the lobby.
If you just ran it up.
It wasn't reserved.
You could run it up.
Which is what the dream was at that time. It was like, let's take the $200 we made from the cafeteria today, deposit it at 3-6, see if we can spin it. And if we spin it enough times, we could potentially take a shot. with these guys who are the heroes at the time. Now that's its own, ridiculous, degenerate path that we could explore from a more mature bankroll management standpoint. But the point is, that's where the glory was established. That's where the love of the game was really anchored. It was in the possibility of being able to touch that level of excellence or just that level of hype. So when I separated into two eras, I think what changed was that there was a period where everything shifted and rail heaven sort of went away. I mean, you could say it was Black Friday when Full Tilt went down, or more relevantly, I think it was when everything started to shift private, where now those guys don't play the same stakes on public sites where you can open the lobby and have a shot.
Yeah.
Those guys play private, whether it's private apps or private live.
You also stopped getting rewarded, right? For being like, at least I'm just an observer, but it seems like the best players in the world, like we're not playing with those guys when we're playing private. At least we weren't when we were playing the games.
Well, those guys are intentionally kept out of private unless they're at the legacy level, which is what's interesting about this divide is like, if you look at Dwan, Jungle, Galfon, the greats from back in the day, those were guys that had a path paved for them at the time by being celebrity online pros. So they were the ones getting invited to Poker After Dark or whatever those games were at the time. Something shifted when online no longer carried the same celebrity opportunities. When it shifts private, it's like you can't open up rail heaven after you a day of school and watch people play at those levels. And that takes a certain allure. It takes a certain potential out of the live path. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
You can still make money if you're in these private clubs. You can get to 7 figures if you're in all the right ones.
Well, also, I think like the shows have kind of become, I don't want to say comical, but they're more focused on entertaining the viewer. So you're getting guys that you're not getting an Ivy on TV anymore. You're getting, like an airball who's going to be firing and it's a different type of person you're watching on TV. And so at least for the online guy, they're not really looking up to those guys anymore. And it's sort of also, I think, I don't want to say illegitimizes, but might put doubt in like the people around them that poker's even a legit thing because they look at TV and they're like, you're trying to be that guy? And he's like,
that's actually, that's a really good point. They look at the lineup and they probably see more recreational or comedic relief even, which is what makes these games good for entertainment, which is how they need to be in some capacity. But you're right. When an online crusher, someone who's just obsessed with the game, focusing online all day, watches those shows, I think it's become harder to relate to the characters in those games, which is an issue, but in a different way than you would think. So a lot of the consults that I've done over the last 10 years carry this same pattern. When you get to the heart of what the person's struggling with, specifically the obsessed online player who knows they really love this game and they want to take it all the way, but they spend a lot of time in the basement grinding. What they will say is, I have not been able to explain this profession to my friends and family. My girlfriend, she doesn't understand variance. And my parents, they still haven't validated this career as a real path. That's a real issue for these guys. It creates a lot of inner conflict. In some cases, it can create a lot of shame that they don't really know how to deal with. Most of them try to overcome it in the only way that they know how, as very logical thinkers, which is like, let me try to explain variance to my girlfriend. Good luck, bro.
Yeah.
The girlfriend doesn't care about that. What I would hope I could get across to people who are in this situation is that you're never going to prove yourself at that level to the people that you love because they think you're crazy for doing this in the first place.
Totally. I can relate to that too, because I think when I had the tournament score and was going through this whole phase of my life, playing bigger cash, playing in, the private room every day. Like, I think I remember my parents came, I think it was just my mom, because my dad was sick at the time, came to see me playing Ivy's room. And it was like, to her, I made it in life, and there was no more doubt of like, I never was answering questions about what am I doing with my life anymore. Like there was none of that. Whereas before my tournament score and before I started really getting engulfed in this life, I experienced the same thing. It's just like you're constantly trying to justify that you're not some gambling addict or something. Like it's unbelievable.
Until they see you in Ivy's room.
Right.
Because that makes sense to them. You mentioned your mom, and I would say people don't respect your grind. They respect symbols of power that they understand.
Hmm.
And that's the connection that the online player is not really making, is like, I'm looking for ways to make this career appear legitimate to the people that I love so that they stop questioning me. Because that's an annoying thing to have to deal with.
Yeah.
Especially on days where you lose.
It's not just annoying. I think it creates a self-doubt.
It absolutely does.
You know, and it's like you're wondering, wow, maybe they're right. You know, maybe I am crazy or you know, obsessed with something that isn't going anywhere.
Or doesn't overlap with anyone else's reality. See, that's the key, is like, for your success to land with the people in your life that don't understand poker, you have to find a way to make it overlap with their reality if you care about gaining their respect. And that's where I really want to double down on this, because in these consults, all these guys clearly do care. This is a really big need that hasn't been met. I mean, respect is a need that I think runs through every single man, no matter what profession. And these guys are trying really hard to be great at something that they love, but they're unable to figure out how to solve the communicational gap that's created by not knowing how to convey their career in a legitimate way. Well, it's private.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
You find a symbol that connects and overlaps with the people who aren't involved in poker.
I mean, for me, it was the stack pictures. Like I would take pictures of my stack and it became real and I'd post it on like IG or something. And it became real to everybody in my circle that I quote unquote made it or whatever. Like there wasn't a question anymore about, you know, what is Paul doing in his life? He doesn't have a job. He does not, you know, he's just going to a casino every day. It's like, oh wait, no, Paul's playing for legitimate money. Like this is big. These games are big, you know?
So if it only did that, like if the only utility of private was that it finally stopped the questioning from people around you, I think it would be worth exploring that path alone. But obviously there's much more to it. You're playing for 10x the stakes. You know, you're holding a stack of flags that is, you know, someone's home. You're winning and losing houses daily.
Yeah.
It's clearly a higher echelon. And the only reason I think there's not more talk about it is because a stigma has developed that it's not even possible to get in.
I think also, I mean, I think we related on the fact that it didn't seem right that if you're obsessed with poker in 2025, that you didn't have a way in these games. Like you and I were both obsessed with poker and we were lucky enough to have connections and get in the games. But for the normal guy that doesn't have the immediate access, isn't in Vegas, doesn't even know that what you have to do in the current landscape to get in, or in the previous landscape when we got in to get in, it's a game that you have to learn all on its own. And it becomes this new thing. And I admire you because I've saw that once you got kicked out of it, the passion and the effort that you put into basically just reframing your entire company. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's what it looked like from my perspective. It was just that you've like basically transformed this entire thing, whether it's PD or stacks. You've created this bridge that's allowing the obsessed guy to take a path.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen the Dan Cates pod we did last week, I talk in detail about how I lost access to these private games around the point where I started making a bunch of money and people started realizing it. Pro tip, don't tell people how much you're up in the games, no matter how drunk you are.
I don't have to worry about that personally. But
so yeah, that was the impetus for me really moving forward with developing the agency and making sure that it helped both sides. I mean, I'm in an interesting position in the sense that I own a company that serves pros and a big part of stacks, the original concept was lineup protection to make sure that recreationals were walking into games that they were truly going to enjoy, that weren't totally pro infested,
Yeah.
that didn't have pros at the table who were super tight and boring and unfriendly. So
I think that was the I remember you sent me a text that sort of changed it, because originally it was, oh, we don't want to play in a game with a bunch of pros. But then you sent me a text and you're like, the key is action. I just like, it was a lightning moment. And I think that once you realize that became sort of the way to build a path, right? Like, as long as you could maintain an action threshold, that's the way to protect the lineup. Is you create an action threshold, and now you can let the pros in as long as they're willing to fire, right?
yeah, so the action threshold was a term that we developed to try to create an objective measurement for how good a game would have to be before a recreational player would be guaranteed to have a good time. Simply put. Now, different recreational players have different action thresholds. Some desire more action than others. But for the most part, it gives you a way to start to gauge not just, is this pro good for the game, but is the game on the whole going to satisfy a particular type of recreational? And that's how you can begin to optimize lineup organization.
Yeah. And I think the fun part about that too is, like, I've talked to a lot of the PD guys, because just becoming, your friend, I hang out with a lot of them. And when you're really obsessed, there's like this fun aspect of new studying that you get to do, because you get to find ways to give action and do it in a way that isn't going to kill your bottom line, which is a new thing that, I think for the obsessed online grinder, it'll unlock a new way to study that'll be, different and fun.
100%. So, I mean, this is a good time to actually go into what we have worked on together as sort of modules for PD, which is the pro division of Stacks.
Mm-hmm.
Again, PD places pros directly into the best private games that Stacks has access to. Live has a different evaluation system than online, obviously, because in live there is this action threshold combined with, are you good for the game in terms of banter and social rapport? But a big part of it on the strategic side that I think pros are really going to start to enjoy digging into is what we've been calling calibrated action.
Yeah.
The pro who this is going to be a fit for is the one who's so obsessed with the longevity of the game, the love for the game, that any new format that is required in order for them to keep playing bigger is one that they're okay with learning.
Yeah.
And I think that it does take the type of player that is more flexible in terms of how they adapt to warped structures.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, Annie's stand-up game, Squid, whatever they're calling it online. There's different variations of these bounty games that you got to be on board with. I mean, Cucurucho, which came over from Spain, Barcelona, 2022 was the first time we brought that back to Vegas, and now that's a huge bomb pop format.
I love all these games, by the way. I'm not saying I'm good at them, but I love playing them. I mean, they bring something to the game that it allows action to be the theme without you trying to quote unquote force the action. Like, it just happens naturally. So you can, play in a way that doesn't feel like you're not being yourself, and you're not, while simultaneously giving action.
And you're exploring, you're just exploring new formats of a game that you already love. But like I said, there's a specific type of guy who really loves the warped element. I was drawn to that because as someone who really clings to first principles, like I'm always trying to build a first principle out of a new environment that I can connect to. And that's when I start to build new strategy. If I can identify what the principles are.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was not able to do that with PLO fast enough, which was the taxes I was playing to be in that game originally. I think I lost probably well over six figures just in PLO bomb parts, which is pretty hard to do. But it was because I didn't understand the principles of the game yet.
Yeah.
And I think what you can do if you're someone who's obsessive about strategy is start to channel your strategy obsession into creative ways to be good for the game, using action as a way to sort of play with your image.
Yeah. What's like, do you have any the big stand-up pots that come to your mind as like the biggest stand-up game or carnival game pot you ever played? Maybe it was the small blind game.
The small blind game is one where you start out with an ante from each player that sits on the button. The small blind is the only player that can win that bounty that's sitting on top of the button in any given hand.
Mm.
And everything else stays the same. Button moves around the table as normal, but basically creates a huge incentive for the small blind to do crazy shit to win the pot. Every next hand, you add a big blind to that bounty.
Wow.
So there was like a point where in this game where like small blind was playing, the bounty was basically like 30 bigs or something. Might have been more, might have been 40. Which just puts you in really weird positions where you basically have to see a flop with almost any two, assuming it's not an enormous amount to play with. And those were the nights I really loved because like, if you're not thinking in terms of first principles, you'll miss some really clear spots where you have to give action.
Yeah.
It's correct for you to give action. It would be sacrificing tons of edge not to give the action. So I think those are really the formats that bring a harmony to private, because you're finding ways to warp the game in a way that's enjoyable to a recreational player who really just is there for the action.
Right.
But you still get to use your strategic mind and be like, okay, so how do I make sure that I'm playing this spot well?
Yeah. So there's 40 bigs in the small blind. What happens?
I don't remember the exact, I could probably figure it out. So it limps around, Kier over limps in the cut. There's another guy who limps the button. Maybe that guy opened, actually. I flat the small with 10-5 off. Who's the guy that...
The Nick Howard's playing 10-5 off from the small blind, guys. So
well, I had the small blind bounty.
I know. I'm messing around.
And it goes like call. And I overcall because whatever.
I mean,
like it's
you got this far. I mean, whatever.
I got a 40 BB bounty. Flop comes like 10 high, like 10-3 deuce, two-tone. I have a 10-5 off. And I'm like, cool. I have like a 1.5 SPR.
You just read.
And in my head, I'm like, well, I don't know how this is supposed to model, but I'd really like that bounty. And I'm not really crazy about giving free cards. There's like almost like this dead pot incentive that develops where it seems to me at least, I mean, I haven't studied the spot, but one of those spots where like intuitively I was like, I think I just need to open rip this, even though that kind of defies the laws of normal.
Well, I think you're just going to get called so wide. Like a guy, if he has any pair, has to call you. You could have like 5-4-0 and just be doing it.
Well, maybe it's that, but it's also that like you just need to protect this pot because the pot's actually way bigger than it looks.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
As the small blind, which is what's cool about it. It's like I'm playing a different pot than everyone else. So I open rip and Kier's sitting in the cutoff with like ace-3 of club or something, which is basically nut flush draw plus pair. He calls. The guy behind him folds king-10. So I was like dead either way because that guy's calling if Kier doesn't. I end up losing 100K pot to Kier in wild fashion where like I'm never in the hand without 10-5, but I kind of have to be in the hand. There's just all this weird stuff that comes from it where...
It's funny because I think my biggest carnival game pot I ever played, I lost to. It was against Matt. We were like 40K effective. Flop came 5-3 or stand-up game. We're last two standing. I limp from early position with 5-3-0 because I'm heads up and he's in the straddle. So like I know he's going to see the flop a ton. So I just open limp. It limps to him. He checks his option.
Flop, I remember this hand.
Flop comes 5-3 deuce, 2 clubs. Checks to me. I bet like I think I overbet the pot. And it came back to him and he raised my overbet on the flop by he 3x raised it to, I think I want to say I bet 2K and he made it 6K and I flatted. Turn brick. He bets like 10. I just rip and he snaps with queen 3 of clubs and it comes club. We run it twice, comes 2 clubs and I got scooped.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, but I mean
run out.
Yeah, but it's amazing because like, why am I ever in the hand with 530 otherwise? It's just like you start playing these pots, it just changes the game, man. I mean, these carnival games, you don't see them in a normal environment, but it's part of what I think we mentioned this on the Jungle Pod. These games can balloon and play like 10x as big, and it just makes it so much more fun because you're having to adapt constantly, and your brain's never stopping. You know, you're always figuring out something new.
It turns into its own little journey, I would say. Like if you were to come to Vegas for a month and play private, you're leaving thinking about totally different areas of the game than when you showed up, especially if you're someone who's obsessed.
Yeah.
Which is where I think like there's this whole lane of cool strategy development that opens up, like not this gritty solver strategy development. There's a whole nother echelon of private strategy that I think is super cool to explore with people who genuinely want to get better for the game. And I think that's why you need to find people who are just obsessed with the game itself.
Totally.
Because if you tell them, guys, like this is what it needs to look like in order for these games to run in a way that's healthy. Action needs to be given. These formats need to be part of what we play. Go entertain yourselves with how to give maximum action.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, like just seeing how, because my exposure to, like I said, was just watching it on TV and getting to be in the environment now and getting to play similar pots that you saw when you're rolling on or watching it on TV for me is what really happens. Because I think in a normal, I don't know, I don't play online, but I think in a normal environment now, the game is pretty solved in terms of like you open these hands from this spot, you do these things. And when you get to play in these live environments, it brings it back to like when you were watching on TV and you're like, that guy has that hand in that spot. Like Dwan just 4-bet 6-4 suited. What's going on? Like, I think there's a lot more of that in the private scene. And for me, it's just fun. It's fun to be a part of. It's fun to play. And
there's a lifestyle element to it that's built in also.
Yeah.
It doesn't get talked about enough, but a lot of what the consults with the online players who are stuck in that 200, 300, 400,000 a year range consists of is complaints or concerns about how they don't know how to find a lifestyle balance. They're not satisfied with their lifestyle yet. And some of them are talking about even like life balance and stuff like that, and not sure if they're picking the right type of life balance. I don't know who to talk to except for the guy who's obsessed with the game to the point where what I can say to him and feel totally good about is you're going to grind 9 months a year, maybe 10. And there's going to be time in your calendar, if you want it, where you can come to places like Vegas or any other hotspot city where private exists. And you're going to be able to get your fix in a real environment where there's not just action at the table, but there's a culture that you can step into away from the game. You know, not just with the other PD pros who are in town, but like you're meeting really cool people. And this lifestyle extends to dinner, the bar, the club, and then you have restart the next day. And like I said, for guys who earn this position, which are the guys that I'm dedicated to giving it to, the guys who are really going to appreciate it because they love the game that much and they just love the grind, but they don't have time to figure out how to get connected.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this agency exists for. And those guys are going to be in positions where what life balance looks like to them is I play online 9 or 10 months a year, and my vacation is Vegas with the boys, and we play private and we play big. And you get the respect and the glory that way, where you can never get that online anymore.
No, totally. I think it's like if you're obsessed and you love poker, you deserve it. You know, like you deserve to have your entire life be about the thing that you're obsessed about. And this is a way to do it that makes it fun and brings back the fun. You're not just, you know, grinding all day and night. Like these guys are telling me stories. They're not even, they don't have time to go to the restroom. They're peeing in water bottles and stuff to be able to play.
The online guys.
Yeah, the online guys. Yeah, they're telling me these stories from like when they're grinding all year and they come out and visit. And I couldn't even imagine that. Like my whole life is sort of a vacation. So
I think they don't realize how deep of a life balance can establish in private live. it contains what you're looking for alongside a game that plays 10x the stakes that you can play online. Like the ecosystem of the culture that develops from being submerged in private is just another echelon of fun engagement, even from the strategy side. Like you don't lose that, especially if you're talking to your boys about how this new warped game plays.
Mm-hmm.
You know how much more fun it is to talk about a hand history where the pot's 50 grand as opposed to 5 grand? Like, let's just focus on that for 1 second. Like,
yeah,
your friends want to talk about the biggest pots, especially the guys that you really want their suggestions on in terms of how to play. And I just don't see how you keep getting that in your Discord thread. You're not going to get the same level of engagement around strategy that you could get in private at the highest levels, where the strategy development is leading edge. Like the tactical calibration module is basically carving into so many new cool areas of strategy that have never even been thought of before.
Totally.
Because the game's never looked like what it does now in private. And the incentives are different.
And what I've sort of contributed to it is just the way that you can get comfortable and make connections so that your personal growth off the table happens as well. Like you're getting to meet new people, you're getting to build relationships. And I know that might seem intimidating if you've been playing online in the basement for the last 6 months, but there's a way to do it in a way that keeps you calm, gets you excited. You sort of become this action guy that they all are naturally going to like anyway, immediately. And like I was saying earlier, that's sort of how I built my identity, was just firing. And then once, you have that, it breaks the ice. It immediately breaks the ice and you're able to build connections that last you, hopefully beyond poker.
We spent 4 days locked in our car, sitting in a parking lot, building the Private Poker Access playbook, which was basically our first commitment, I would say, to the pro who is anxious and wants to know what are the big mistakes I need to avoid when I step into this environment. This playbook came from all the notes we compiled from closed door meetings with some of the biggest game runners in Vegas over the last 2 years. Stories that got pros blacklisted.
Yep.
We wrote it all down and we put it in this playbook and we chiseled it for you guys. So it's like a quick 10-minute read. If you read this playbook, you're prepared to avoid all of the big mistakes that could possibly bite you in the ass the first time that you walk into private.
Well, I think also too, dude, like I was talking to you about this before we walked in today. What these guys don't realize is it's similar to going out to a nightclub or going to a nice restaurant. It's just like there's a few things you just don't do so you don't get kicked out. And if you make sure you don't do those things, you'll be fine. Like the rest of it, you can learn, just by putting yourself in the environment over and over again. Just make sure, you don't throw the pasta all over the, person walking down the hallway, and you should be good to go. Like that's basically it, but in poker terms.
Well, that one's easy. But there's some subtle ones like the bet size stuff. Check it out in the playbook, guys. It's free. We released it. You can find it on all of our socials. Like I said, it was the product of us like just cluttering our car with Ghost for 4 days straight. We didn't even come home. We sat in the Durango casino parking lot and they thought that we were drug dealers because we just had the doors locked and we were cranking this thing out. But it exists now. It's there for you as sort of the first step to hopefully get you over this anxiety. And specifically, we built it for the obsessed 20-something or early 30 grinder who just really loves the game so much that they would love to be able to feel like they could step in and not have to worry about blowing their shot. So that exists now as sort of like the stepping stone to the Stacks agency.
And I really think like, again, I'm just looking in on it, but it seems like the culture that of the guys that I've met, at least that are PD players, is just this obsession. And I think it's what you really need if you're gonna make it in this private scene. Is you just need to be so obsessed that you are willing to, whether it's a tactical strategy or push yourself in your comfort zone for the social aspect of it, you just are willing to do it because you love the game. And I think that if there's one thing we can leave the viewers with today, it's that there is a path, if you still love poker, to do something really fun with it, and that, builds your career and makes it legitimate. And yeah, I mean, I don't know.
100% for anyone who is obsessed. I would say those are the easiest guys to train, because the training process just becomes at this level like, how are we going to continue to make these games healthy, fun, and how are we going to make it link up with the lifestyle that you really want that you can't get online? I think that's the real connector for this community, for the culture that we're building, for the PD pros who snap into Stacks. And it's for online too. Like there's a lot of club access that we're going to be rolling out that's just exclusive to the Stacks agency network. It's both sides of the coin. It's the online private and the live private. And I feel like at this stage, we are speaking directly to the guy who's looking for a form of life balance that exists by balancing live private with online.
Yeah.
So that it just complements each other, so that when you go play private for 2 months of the year, not only are you playing 10x the stakes, but you're going to make, as much, if not more, as you did in the other 10 months playing online. So if you haven't checked out the Dan Cates pod, we did it last week. Take a look at it. It explains how we developed these systems and what the motivations were for Stacks, how we plugged PD into place with it. It's all there. Dan is coming out May 31st to help out with the mastermind. We got Elliott Road 2. That's the spot if you want to get connected to this network. I do not know how many seats will be available because it depends how many private options open up. But Stacks will remain on the leading edge of developing more partnerships with trusted private games, trusted private club networks, trusted affiliates. If you're an affiliate agent online, feel free to reach out to us if you want to hook up. And I would say the private expansion project is the perfect synergy for the pros who have been coming up online and the guys that really want to be able to step into a more respectable lifestyle. This thing that you're never going to be able to get online anymore just because the climate has shifted. There's no more rail heaven. So you can check everything out on our socials, guys. All the info's there if you're going to be in Vegas for the mastermind. I will see you here, and I'll see you in the next episode where we break down hopefully more fun adventures of private.